Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Versus, where we're pitting True Detective Season 1 against True Detective Night Country. Whoa, we're halfway there. Whoa, one-eyed polar bear, as we have reached the halfway point of both of the seasons of True Detective that we are pitting against one another, as Part 3 of True Detective Night Country is going up against what I would refer to as maybe the most famous episode, or at least famous sequence of True Detective Season 1. And who goes there? To answer that question, I go there. Mike Bloom here to do an hour-plus long continuous tracking shot of a podcast, as we're going to keep comparing these two seasons against one another. But I, much like Pete Pryor, am but a sweet idiot compared to this lovely person co-hosting alongside me, the great LaTonya Starks. Hi, LT.
Hi, I'm very happy to be here this week. I have so many things to say.
Yes, and we've got a lot to talk about as we get two incredibly adventurous episodes of True Detective in many different ways. As we are talking, Nic Pizzolatto has certainly made a voice about how different season 1 is than season 4, but you didn't need his words, because just looking at these two episodes, we really are letting these lines that started in kind of the same place veer off into incredibly different directions.
Yes. I mean, this episode of season 1 is truly one of the wildest things that has happened on TV ever, and it did not age well. Uh
Oh,
it being 10 years old makes a lot of sense. And this newest episode of season 4 of True Detective, I don't know what it is. I'm just in for this story. Like who could say what it could possibly be? The reason that I identify with and care so much more about season 4 than I do about season 1 at
who
the
would
moment.
have thought? As if there's like one stark difference between the two leads, between the two seasons.
There's one Starks difference.
Oh
That's
yeah,
for sure.
there's a lot of snow around, much like the North. The North remembers, and we have a lot to remember over the course of these two episodes. As of course, every week here on Versus, we are matching these two up against one another, comparing characters, storylines, moments, etc., to see which season, I should say, will reign supreme. I gotta start with Night Country here because,
Mhm.
again, Nic Pizzolatto has taken some comments in a certain direction in recent press about his thoughts on season 4. It is very clear that he is an EP in name only, that he sort of
Mhm.
gave up the deed to the house and then sort of complained with what the owners were doing with it when he drove by it in the cul-de-sac on a recent visit. I mean, I'm sure even us, who came in saying, all right, I hear this is the horror theme season of True Detective,
Mhm.
that should be interesting. I don't know, LT, at least from my perspective, you can counter this, if I had ever even glanced the thought of things like vision sequences of reanimated corpses and guttural possessed voices
Uh-huh.
coming out of near quadriplegics.
Yeah.
It is a wild, wild show. And to your point, like, I am still trying to figure out how I feel about it. It's like boiling the frog slowly, but simultaneously kicking the temperature up a lot, because we've only been through 3 episodes, but it feels so distinctly toned.
Boiling the frog slowly is actually triggering because my grandmother accidentally boiled her frog alive.
What? Wait, how?
It was very cold in the house that we used to live in. We didn't get proper heat. And
Uh-huh.
so I had bought her one of those little frogs and like a tank for it because she loved frogs. I think they're disgusting. I don't want to be anywhere near them. I don't want warts. I don't want anything to do with a frog. But she was like, oh, I'll just put the frog in a pot on the stove and like heat up the water. But then she forgot about it.
But, like,
Yeah,
that's literally how you boil a frog.
that is literally how you boil a frog.
How do you expect any other result?
I I'm not saying that Granny was as spry as she maybe should have been in this particular moment. But that definitely happened to me. Um Yeah, this season's wild, Mike. Like, I'm excited about the things, the turns that it's taking though. Like, I love the fact that, I mean, I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. I did see there being like spiritual visions in this show because I
Uh-huh.
know that this show focuses on Native American lore, and it's
Mhm.
almost as if we can't do something focusing on Native American lore without dream sequences. For whatever reason, that's just like part of the zeitgeist and like part of how we culturally view Native Americans, for better or worse.
Definitely in the Family Feud top 5 things you might think about Native Americans for sure.
Exactly. But I didn't expect my main character in Callie Reese to be someone who is like able to see into other worlds, essentially.
Yeah, I guess, is this the multiverse or is this into purgatory? Because apparently she may also be coming into contact with what I'm assuming is through context clues, the deceased child of
Yeah.
Danvers
Yes.
saying, "Hey, say hi to your mother for me."
Yeah. Uh Tell my mom I say hello, like coming from a little child that she thought she saw running on the ice, that she hit her head and then goes to this completely different place. I know that we'll get flashbacks of her time in the armed forces, so that probably has to do with the location of where she woke up. But the combination of this and the exorcist moment
Yeah.
at the end with Lund is just like, what exactly is going on with Evangeline Navarro?
Yeah, we go from like, "Here's a message for my mommy" to "Your mother sucks cocks in hell." Two very
Yeah.
different matronly messages being communicated from beyond the grave. As we delve deeper into this mystery, what I do think is interesting between both of these episodes is that I do think on the surface, I wouldn't say the case stalls, but like they are kind of hinging around significant singular plot points. For season 1, it's okay, we've got a name, Reggie Ledoux. We need a reason to trap him. Let's spend an hour trying to figure out how to do that exactly. Here it's, okay, we've got a guy. His name is Lund. Let's see if we can bring him out of that coma. We have another guy to talk. Let's see if we can talk to him, if you will. And so a lot, of course, centers around those core conceits and goes to show, again, like, you just need one sturdy trunk of a tree and you can hang a lot on it, even though Liz Danvers is bad at decoration. I mean, let's get back to the weirdness of it all, though, LT. What do you make of this? Because, of course, of our main twosome, Navarro is brought up to be the more spiritual one. Actually, a very like a season 1 exchange, I feel like, between Danvers and Navarro, where Danvers says, "You talk to God?" And she goes, "No, I listen."
Listen,
And is it indicating to us that she has some sort of, I'm going to say, otherworldly connection with the spirits that reside in Alaska? Is she, sharing that similar trait to someone like Rose?
I think that she does. I think there's something about her family and her experiences with trauma that kind of make her unique in a lot of different ways. And one of those ways is that she is more open to the spirit world, I guess. I mean, we get her in previous episode seeing that polar bear, and we know what that represents. We see
Mhm.
her finding the cross that was her mother's in her car, like out of nowhere, while trying to connect with her sister. There's also a lot going on with her sister in this episode that
Yeah.
we don't necessarily see, but she's saying what the scientists are saying, which is she's coming, right?
Yeah.
And that's that a voice that Evangeline heard with those same words. So there has to be something about her unique life experiences that have led her to this moment.
Yes, but then on the other hand, what, makes this so complicated is, as Rose talked about last episode, basically don't mix up having a connection with the spirits for mental illness. And of course,
Mhm.
the downward spiral that happened with her mother, we get a bit more of the family history here. Thank you, Kavik, for like dragging it out of her like an ice fish on a line. And we clearly see that Julia, again, either maybe she has progressed with those symptoms or maybe she's having that spiritual connection. And I imagine what's going to be the big to do with Navarro starting immediately from next episode is like, how much of this does she think is actually real? Is she
Yeah.
seeing things? Does she really believe that this paranormal voice spoke to her through this man who's barely clinging to life? Is she taking that at face value, or is she trying to dismiss it in a manner of speaking, even for her, the spiritual one of the two, as like, nope, this is just me losing my mind like my mother?
I think that she has to take the totality of the circumstances that are building up around her and start to lean in a little bit more. You know, like I don't think that she necessarily believes that she has the same constitution as her mother. I think that would be a very natural thought for her to have. I think that's her fear for her sister more so than for herself. I think she very much sees herself as sane, and that this is just another part of her psyche manifesting itself, and that'll be interesting to explore going forward.
So season 4 is, following a bit in the footsteps of season 1 in the snow. In this particular episode, we talked a lot about how, as you mentioned, there were some like brief flashes to, hey, here's Danvers and her ex dancing. Here's
Mhm.
Danvers playing Twist and Shout on the radio with her son. Here's Navarro addressing a half-faced man in the desert somewhere. Here, though, it feels like we are truly delving into a bit of that flashback territory with opening the episode, as they're all cold opens in this season, with her meeting Annie,
Mhm.
and truly going from this incredibly hostile situation, calling from her arrest, to getting to experience this birth happening and getting to, fully be brought into this culture, and much like Leah does, perhaps understand a bit as to how the other half sees things. But again, I have to go back to this spiritual element, LaTonya. The Losty in me can't help but think about the babies of it all, and the fact
Yeah.
that Annie is a midwife, and we have this very climactic moment in the beginning where like the baby is delivered, but they're not breathing for a second, but then they suddenly are. And we jump to the present, and there's this news of, oh, this baby was stillborn as of this morning. Do we think there's going to be some larger mystery around this mine? And maybe there's a logistical reason behind it as well, as to, okay, the offspring are being withheld in a manner of speaking because of the curse that's been laid upon this eponymous and enigmatic she.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I mean, like this mine is essentially killing a generation of people.
Mm,
And we see some of the fallout from what the people on the land closest to the mine, which is what people on reservations and like native land experience on a constant basis. There's either uranium runoff, or there's some type of other nuclear runoff, or there is like mining happening or fracking happening. And we
literally pick your poison.
yeah, and that's just what we do on and around native land.
Hmm.
And so, Danvers going to this house and trying to be there for this mother. And we see her taking a second for herself and going in the bathroom, and we see the water that comes out of the sink. Like
Yeah.
this is what people are drinking and bathing in. So of course their offspring are going to bear the brunt of it, and it's terrible, but it's very, very true to life.
Hmm. What did you make of these extended flashback sequences between Navarro's first encounter with Annie, and also a case that we really didn't know about from
Mm.
before, the tale of Wheeler, the William Wheeler, the guy who ends up killing his girlfriend in a quote-unquote murder-suicide that
Mhm.
apparently wasn't much of a suicide, more like a murder-homicide, because he happened to be whistling the wrong Beatles song at the wrong time.
Yeah. Danvers definitely shot him, right?
Yeah, but I guess again, another question we have to ask due to the freaky deakiness of this season is like, was that coincidental? Was it her being quite literally trigger happy and triggered by that song? Or was it him communicating some sort of message?
Wow. I would hate that it would be him communicating some kind of message, but it would very much fit in with the themes of this season. I mean, the lore behind this season is just so interesting coming from Issa Lopez, because it is just all horror all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in my happy place here, Mike. This episode takes place on my birthday.
Oh, there we go. It's quite literally a gift to you.
Yes, it is a gift just to me from Issa Lopez, who I don't know, but she likes giving me things.
What did you think, I guess, speaking of things being in your flavor, of that ending of Navarro being alone in the room? And we sort of get like a more regular conversation with Lund when he comes to. He says, we woke her and now she's out. She's out there on the ice. She came for us in the dark. We deal a lot with like Hank's BS redneck manhunt squad
Oh my
in the
God.
lobby. And so it gives the prime opportunity for the real scary shit to happen as
Yeah.
Lund sits up and says, hello, Evangeline. Your mother says hello. She's waiting for you. And then he convulses and dies. And then we even get a little bit of found footage, quite literally, in the form of
Yeah.
Annie's phone. I mean, definitely the most like horror-coded stuff we've had so far in the series.
For sure. This episode, I think, with the cold open that you mentioned earlier, does such a great job of getting us acquainted with Annie and what the type of person that she was, and seeing her in the pictures, like being happy with her boyfriend, and like really coming through and delivering this baby. And then we hear the horror-filled screams of her last moments, probably on this earth. It's chilling in every way, and I absolutely adore all of it.
Yeah, it's an absolutely incredible way to end this episode. I love what you said about the bookends of introducing Annie in quote unquote her first moments, at least in Navarro's eyes, and now in her last moments. Plus, obviously, providing a lot of questions as to like, okay, what was she looking for in this icy cave? Was she a monster hunter, maybe, that ends up, being at the end of something that she was pursuing? And then, of course, as well, who is talking to
Right.
Navarro in that moment? Is this true? Is her mother in communication with whoever this might be?
It's possible. I mean, not only does he say your mother's, like, he says she's here and points to behind her. So this woman is always walking with the spirit of her mother on her, it seems, which is like really difficult to deal with as a person who is just trying to make it through life, but especially if you're in the middle of a multiple murder case.
So this is a big Navarro episode, less so on Danvers. After finding a lot about her in the last episode, she takes a bit of a step back, but I want to take a bit of a step forward on the case as a name is brought up. Oliver Tagak. Turns out that, hey, yeah, there's a lot of bros hanging out in Salal Station, but one of them got away. There was this
Yeah.
former member of the crew, Oliver, who had a little bit of a roll in the hay with one of the hairdressers in the town. And he just kind of gave up and became a nomad. As a result, now they leave things in a very open place, in a very shut hut, as he rebuffs them angrily and kicks them off. But how soon do you think he's coming into the picture here?
He has to be in the next episode. We're
Yeah.
just running out of time, you know?
We're halfway through. Only
Yeah.
3 hours left. I agree. And I think also the reaction he had specifically to like the reveal as to what happened to the Salal members.
Right.
Yes, again, he does turn them away initially, but like that lives with him, you know?
It does. And I think that he was also the hunter that we got in the cold open of the first episode.
I was wondering that because they did say that, oh, he's probably hunting around, doesn't want to be found. I was wondering
Right.
if he was the guy that was hunting the caribou when they all freaked out.
I would have to watch it again, but I think that that's supposed to be him. And him seeing the caribou freak out is probably part and parcel of his reaction to Danvers and to Navarro in this episode.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. What I really loved about this episode, among many things, is again this spotlight on the indigenous cultures of Alaska between, the birthing ceremony that Navarro and us are privy to, and then I guess on the opposite side of that, between what I perceived, and correct me if I'm wrong, were like funereal proceedings for the stillborn child that they attended later on, to the protest that Leah attends, the music, not to spoil too much about, one of our upcoming categories here, but God brings so much out of me and not just a lot of phlegm from all that throat singing.
There's a lot of throat singing in this episode. It's really cool. I would like to learn how to do that, actually. Yeah, the focus on culture, I think, is the point of the season overall. Like, I think that what Issa Lopez and company wanted to do was to really bring to light a culture that we don't see on screen very often, and to just introduce us to some of the things that, you know, Native American people go through on a daily basis. And you know, like, they're just like us, but also they have these tremendous struggles that are built into the foundation of this country. So we see things like the protest, and then we see later what the water looks like and why people are actually protesting. I mean, that's not something that Danvers and Leah have to deal with in where they live, you
Right.
know?
Exactly. But speaking of that, I think I feel a little vindicated, a little validated from what we tried to surmise last week when Leah comes home from the protest and Liz finds the marker, she
Mhm.
finds the shirt, and she tells her, "Do you know what happens to those people?"
Yeah.
Again, maybe this is me trying to do some confirmation bias, but this at least says to me, okay, listen, Danvers is just not like an absolute party pooper. She is trying to
Right.
look out for the safety of her stepdaughter because she has
Yes.
experienced firsthand, while passionate about these causes, the violence that can be enacted against those people.
Yeah, I think she's just terrified um of losing another kid at this point.
Hmm.
I mean, we see like such a soft side of Danvers in this episode.
Yeah.
We see her making the mac and cheese for the little girl and telling her about Puddles the unicorn. You know, we see her and I love that woman who's crocheting and like waiting to get her roots done. Being like, yeah, me, I cry a lot too. Uh, and we see her, you know, like in effect, taking these like younger cops under her wing as well.
Hmm.
And we see her with Leah, and like all of those scenes with Leah are so fraught with like so much grief and like their interpersonal relationship drama. But I think there's real love underneath there, and
Yeah.
that's like a side of Danvers that we haven't necessarily seen in other episodes.
I completely agree. It's so interesting to compare Danvers to Hart, not just the sort of like man of science
Mm,
versus man of faith argument that we see with Navarro's spirituality. But listen, I mean, Danvers is not shy about her infidelity, which is
yeah,
something that we will certainly get into with Marty in this episode. But I think Marty Hart fancied himself the people person out of that twosome. And I think that Danvers is certainly the one that has a bit more of the social skills than
yeah.
Evangeline Navarro. She really knows whether it's due to her own experience or just like an idea of how to handle things maybe a bit more cautiously with quite literal kid gloves than Navarro, that she can walk into a situation and know how to defuse a lot of bombs, as opposed to Navarro, who like will usually try to take the bomb, yell at it a bit, and then throw it out the window.
I also think it's just really, she's really good at like showing when to step back. Like
Yeah.
she knows that Navarro has relationships with these people that she could never have. So she really does like step back from the questioning of the hairdresser, and goes and like makes the mac and cheese. She steps back from the like the funeral, you know, that they're having, and just kind of like, you know, connects for a second with the mom. but but her presence is felt throughout
Mm.
this episode, so much so. And I love the work that is being done. I just think that I'm very happy that we get to experience this on our screens in 2024. Like, I did not necessarily have that on my bingo card, but here we are.
One last square on said bingo card before we move on from True Detective Night Country for this week. The hanging Chad, that is Pete, perhaps no longer being a Chad. It's a little bit of a dose of this guy, especially after he kind of got quite literally beaten into place last
Yeah.
week. But, I talked about this cheekily in my introduction to you, LT, but Pete espouses in a couple of lines essentially to Kayla this idea of like, I don't want to be regarded as kind of the naive kid
Hmm.
anymore. And you and I said in the very beginning, oh, this guy's way too sweet and way too innocent to make it to the end of this series. But I guess the other option I have to offer, LT, is what's more likely, Pete dies or Pete breaks bad?
I would love if Pete did it. Like, I would. all of the psychological trauma from his father beating him over years and years, and the entire town knowing about it, just caused him to, I don't know what, like, just lose it and snap and somehow viciously murder people and then spend every day admiring his work.
Oh, that's depraved. I love that.
Isn't that good?
Yeah, just telling Danvers, ask the question. Ask the question. And then she finally asked him, are you the one who did it?
Oh, that would be so good. That
I
just
mean,
gave me chills.
but that's the thing, though, is that the more we're getting into this and the freakier, deakier it gets, the less I'm thinking, like, okay, is this a who or is this a what? You know, that maybe there
Yeah.
is someone to channel this. There is the sort of, painter from Ghostbusters 2 to help channel,
Huh.
channel this spirit. But more so, it might be, okay, there's this malevolent entity that was
Yeah.
responsible for these bases based on the vet's diagnosis of these people dying before they got frozen.
Listen, I trust the vet. Why not? They work with large animals. They're almost human. I just love the scene with the vet for so many reasons, because Danvers is like, could you maybe do a little autopsy?
Yeah, we
Just a
should be able to
little.
look at a little porn at work.
Yeah, as a treat. As a treat. And then he's like, do you think they scratched their own eyes out? Like, it would just be so cool if he were the murderer and he was just like, do you see what I did there?
Yeah,
Oh my God. I made
shouldn't you
them
be
so
paying attention to
scared.
these things? I'm
Yeah.
a better detective than you think, but also I'm kind of cheating. I have
Yeah.
the answer key the
I
whole
have the
time.
answer right now. It would be absolutely wild if it was Pete. Also, because he's look at his sweet little cherubic face.
I know, but he has a child named Darwin.
He
You know,
does.
could you imagine this guy full mask off at being like, the natural order of humans is what they were being studied. It was a mockery to what Charles Darwin set out all these years ago.
I mean, I think that me and you should work on a horror movie script is what I think should happen. Clearly,
I don't think Hollywood would be ready. I don't think they'd ever be ready, to be completely honest.
That particular jelly, they would never be ready.
Well, let's move on to a very different type of jam and talk about who goes there from True Detective Season 1. Let me read a quick rundown for those who did not watch the episode from Wikipedia. In 1995, Charlie Lang admits that he showed pictures of Dora to Reggie Ledoux. Marty tracks down an associate of Ledoux's and learns that Ledoux only sells the meth he makes to one client, the Iron Crusaders, a biker gang out of East Texas. Rust has connections in the Crusaders from his days undercover. He decides to take personal leave days to begin to infiltrate the Crusaders, telling his superiors that he needs to visit his dying father, who happens to also be a character in True Detective Night Country, to the consternation of the showrunner. Meanwhile, Lisa reveals Marty's affair to Maggie, who asks Marty to leave the house, devastating him. Rust convinced Marty to help him as he infiltrates the Iron Crusaders. Russ' contact Ginger promises access to the gang's meth supply in exchange for Russ, who is known to the gang as Crash, help robbing a rival gang. The robbery goes badly, but Russ kidnaps Ginger and barely escapes with Marty. Meanwhile, in 2012, Marty and Russ do not tell Pena and Gilbo about their escapade with the Iron Crusaders. They each maintain the story of Russ taking leave to visit his father in Alaska. Again, these stories continue to really corroborate here. Just wild. But so according to those two cops, Travis Cole has not been in Alaska for 30 years. So I guess if we're taking season 1 as canon, then he has been dead for, I guess, 30 plus years by the time Night Country came about. You're muted.
Of course I am. That sounds right. I'm not good at math, so I'll let you do that.
Well, I think what's interesting, though, is I don't know. Has Rose been seeing him for a number of years? It feels like the way she regarded him was like an old friend. And they talk about the last moments they spent together.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would like. It's weird because we see Travis. He's very much out of time. Like he's a ghost, a ghost. So it's also hard to tell how old he's supposed to be.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what they're doing with the timeline here, but your math makes sense to me.
Yeah, because Rust at least tells the story. He feeds the line that, oh, he was a Vietnam veteran, met my mom. My mom sort of left me with him. We went
Yeah.
to Alaska. So for all we know, this guy could have drank himself to death at an age like 40 or 50 or so that would fit the bill of that man that apparently slept with Rose in that episode 2 flashback. But it just leaves a lot of questions to be asked. But the question I have for you, LT, is what'd you think about this? You teased a lot in the first part of this podcast. Just open wide, let your thoughts be known.
This is the most 2014 bullshit that I have seen in a very long time. It is just strip clubs and raves and booty and tits and men behaving terribly in all the possible ways and starting a race riot in the projects and capturing it all in a oneer that was like, for the time, one of the most inventive things that I had ever seen. But now watching it, I'm just like, okay, it's a oneer.
Well, I was gonna say, like, the bear does it basically every time now.
Yeah.
It feels run of the mill. I mean, this is, I think, the reason for this entire experiment, besides, I guess, the backdoor connection to Travis Cole as a connector between these two, is the fact that this was, as you mentioned, a hallmark, a watermark of the series, if you will. Gets Kerry Joji Fukunaga an Emmy award, gets him a lot of work subsequently. I think really put him on the map as a prestige director. A single continuous 6-minute shot, and he did confirm it was one long take that took us through these projects, through the raid that goes badly, and then through Rust's escape subsequently. Does it hold up? Does it not work as well for 10 years later?
I think that for me, the totality of the circumstances make it a little bit like not great just in how it aged. I mean, like, we are talking about like a white biker gang who is holding a black man hostage on a boat, taking him down the bayou, and then going to the projects dressed as cops in order to steal money from this guy. And it's as bad as it sounds, like it's just ridiculous. I think that the shot itself, like the 6-minute shot, of course, anything like that is impressive. The logistics of it alone, and how, they had to like build maps so that people could see a bird's eye view of how it was going to happen. Like, all of that, as like a person who's interested in cinema, of course, I'm interested in that. But the episode as a whole is just such a total shit show that it kind of takes away a little bit from that like magnificent tracking shot at the end for me.
Well, let's talk about that, shit show, because it really is an episode of two tales, right? Yeah. It really is first half Marty, second half Russ. So I think it only makes sense that we talk about these men chronologically, because, well, if isn't the consequences of Marty Hart's actions being left in the form of a couple of suitcases at the foot of the stairs? It came a calling, quite literally, in Lisa going to the house. I mean, what the hell was this dude expecting between breaking and entering into her place,
right,
threatening to jail, the man that she happened to be sleeping with, and then at court, when she has the gall to be like, what the hell was that? To be like, you don't get to ask that question.
This is respect. Yeah, it's wild. It's also hilarious to see Alexandra Daddario so angry.
Yeah.
Like, she is fuming, and anyone who had any social skills would immediately be able to tell, oh, I'm in trouble. Like this is the moment that my life is going to come crashing down. But Marty Hart is just like, do through life. Like, I've done my testimony for the day, staring directly at the court reporter that I used to be having an affair with, and now I'm going to head home for dinner.
Yeah, though Hart claims this to be Cole, I would say that every time I think that he hits a ceiling, he keeps raising the bar. He is the Michael Jordan of being a son of a bitch.
He is. He really is. Maggie is a good one, because I wouldn't have packed a single thing. Are you kidding me?
No, you come home to all your stuff out on the lawn. That's the maneuver, especially in 1995.
Oh yeah, definitely in 1995. Like you should be happy she didn't just burn the house down, you know?
Yeah, so you see Hart go through, like, the 5 stages of grief, most of them just being anger, but he offers, like,
Right.
a little bit of bargaining, or I guess I would say excuse, like, when he calls Maggie and he's like, "Well, it's ever since I lost my dad," or, "Once this case is over, then we'll get back to normal." You just see that man in that moment where he is the most naked, where he is the most vulnerable. This is a guy who gloated the past 2 episodes of like, "Yeah, old Rust, he was such a loser. He had nothing else
Mhm.
going on in his life, so he got sucked into his work. Me, I always had a home to get back to. I always had an escape." And when that turns out to be a complete fallacy, he has nowhere else to turn.
He has nowhere else to go, and the idea of the two of them being roommates on top of everything else is the funniest thing in the world.
The dolly shot of him like trying to deal with that weird eye mirror, being like, "Am I
Yeah.
supposed to move my head around?"
Am I supposed to see both eyes in this? What's happening? It is also just weird that we know that Russ just stares at a place on the wall for who knows how long at a time. Like, what? I mean, for Hart to be like, this place has an upstairs, right? Like, what is he living like? And then we find out that he was undercover for 4.5 years.
Yeah, and has like a footlocker full of, what everyone walks into the final boss battle in GTA with essentially at any moment's notice.
Yeah, that footlocker was something else. It it's just such a portrait of these two men and like what we had what we thought passed for character development in 2014. Like part of me is like giddy at the like ostentatiousness of it all.
Yeah, 100%. And of course, this leads to Hart hitting his personal low in the series so far, which is angrily rebuffing his, estranged wife who he had an affair with in the middle of a hospital, to the point that she has to get on the phone to Rust Cole, of all people, to be the one to calm the situation down.
Yeah, when you're calling in Cole as the guy to make sure that everything de-escalates, then you really are up shit's creek. You know what I mean? Like, but I clearly none of the doctors or security guards that were there were going to be able to convince this drunk man that he needed to, stop harassing his wife who had kicked him out of the house because of his own actions.
I mean, you and I were both alive in 1995, LaTonya.
Mhm.
Nothing was more powerful than Woody Harrelson, He could walk into
So
any
true.
environment, you're like, "I can't let you leave, sir." I love White Man Can't Jump.
I do love that movie. I have like memories of the first time I saw that movie actually.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. I was very excited to see it in the theater and I was like, "Granny, I want to see White Men Can't Jump." And we were like in the line for a different movie, standing next to a white man and my grandma goes, "White men can do anything a black man can do."
Also, oh wait, I think I left the frog on at home.
A lot
You're
of
great.
stories about Granny today.
Yeah, she sounds like an incredible person. I want
She's
one every. I
amazing.
want to try to like shoehorn this into every single podcast from now on. That's our job.
Good.
Well,
I'll make
let's move.
it happen.
Let's move into the Cole side of things, because White Man can't jump, but they certainly can shoot up ink and cayenne to make it look like they've been a drug addict since they've been away. Good God. I mean, to have Hart's double life get exposed for what it is, Cole gets his own double life exposed as well, as we get to see what this man truly was doing for 4 years, and it is bat effing insane.
The answer is cocaine. He was
Yeah.
doing cocaine, like just tons of it. And it is hilarious that evidence lockers really were that openly available,
Yep.
especially in the South during that time period.
I really loved him quite literally saying out loud, like, there should be a better system for
There
this.
needs to be a better system for this. Yeah. Like I I question how Russ didn't end up dead. I mean, we know that he was in a deadly shootout and it led him to being hospitalized. But so I guess that was the only saving grace, is that he went to a mental health facility.
I mean, I would not be surprised if Russ Cole's like, I've been put on this earth. I have survived. I did not OD. I did not get shot. I've been here to carry out the punishment on behalf of millions of years of humanity. I
Uh-huh.
channel it into a vessel, and it is inked across the giant bird on my forearm. I didn't notice that. Maybe I guess we didn't have a lot of like Russ Cole nearly shirtless scenes. I didn't notice the giant tattoo across his arm until this episode.
Yeah, I didn't either. I guess you're right. We did have the scene of him with his just like white t-shirt on when he was at Marty's house.
Yeah, but I guess I don't know. I guess I was looking
I
at
didn't
I
notice it,
was
I
looking at
guess.
those eyes making goo goo
Yeah.
eyes at Maggie.
Yeah, I was too busy trying to figure out what was going on between the two of them. I mean, even in this episode, like when the chemistry they have, like they lock eyes when he finally gets Marty to leave, and then they meet, and she's like, "You must have been a great husband."
Yeah, well, yeah, because he says like, well, Maggie, the only reason why men and women even mingle with each other is just to produce children.
That's it. That's the only reason. That's the whole point behind men and women, according to Nic Pizzolatto.
Yep, exactly. Again, I do feel like I talked about this before we came on. Like, I would not be surprised if there was a Nic Pizzolatto interview from 2014 or 5 that was like, I really see myself in Rustin Cole.
Oh yeah, oh for sure. Like you don't write characters like that without like loving them at least a little bit, and identifying with them at least a little bit. Yeah, I definitely can. We'll have to look in the archives to see whether or not that exists.
Well, what I think is so interesting about this examination of Cole's character and him being forced to encounter his past is that, yes, we do make fun of the nihilism that he literally practices and preaches throughout his time in 1995 and 2012, but you could see it was almost done like out of necessity. The husk of a man that he was left with, the way he just so coolly and calmly describes that horrific process the Mexican cartels do of like cutting your face off and letting you choke to death on your own genitals while you watch yourself in a mirror. Like, no one survives that and is relatively okay.
It's like, also, no one asked you about this, Russ. Like, calm down.
Sir, this is a Wendy's.
You're just oversharing with everyone. What is going on? Sir, this is a Wendy's that's kind of what I wanted to yell at my screen.
And it leads to this like wild final sequence where we truly see Cole in his element, where here comes Matthew McConaughey on the Sons of Anarchy spinoff for a hot second.
I know, it's really hilarious also that all like pretense of him not being a cop go out the door the second he enters the door of that apartment, because the way that he's checking and clearing the rooms is only the way that like a trained professional would check and clear those rooms. Yeah. And it's just that he's with people who are so high on whatever it is that they are snorting that they and focused on money that they have not paid any attention to this.
Now, to be fair, Cole himself has a lot of blinders on, to the point that he's like, yeah, sure, I'll do a little bit of light crime if it means getting a hint on our lead. And we see the push and pull that occurs over the course of this disastrous raid, where he has to like try to save both the people and the perpetrators themselves from shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, or the head.
Yeah.
As we see, it is like a tap dance that he's doing,
Oh, I love the shot of just him going back and forth, literally up against a wall, just having to have two different conversations at once. The ultimate multitasker is Rustin Cole.
Yeah, who says men can't multitask? Look at what we're doing here. He's just like, take it easy, everybody. And he's getting the kid into the bathtub, which, like, thank God. Like, unfortunately, I know that is the safest place to be during like an invasion, with where guns are involved. But it's just it's just the idea of like going into the projects and like starting all this mayhem and like knowing that, you know, people are going to come for retribution and then the cops are going to come and you're not even like worried about the bodies that you're leaving along the way. Like, I really don't understand how he escapes from this unscathed. Like, he is fantastic at evading the cops.
Yeah. Again, it felt out of a video game. Like, it felt like
did.
a stealth mission to make your way through these houses, past the polygons, through the backyard, into the getaway car that happened to pull out at that time. It is the most impressive thing that's been done, I would say, in both series so far.
So impressive. I mean, honestly, the driving by Marty. I need you to be at Amelia Street in 90 seconds.
In
What?
1995, where you don't have GPS.
Exactly.
Where, the technology is a point where Cole gives Marty a cell phone and has to teach him that green is pick up and red is hang up.
It's really good. It's really good, like, period piece work, I think.
Well, let's give our own green and red signals to these two episodes as we get into our category by category breakdown, officially moving into the versus section of the podcast. Starting with our main two detectives, the true detectives. LaTonya, between Hart and Cole and Danvers and Navarro, who's getting your nod this week?
This is honestly tough because you just think about how much Hart and Cole accomplished in the last 6 minutes. But there was something about the way that Danvers and Navarro worked off of each other this week that was like a real teamwork vibe, as opposed to I'm coked up and you've got to deal with me. Here's some whiskey, which is what Hart and Cole were doing.
Yeah, and so, I will also think it's a little bit of like, you know, welcome to the party for Danvers and Navarro. I feel like they didn't necessarily get a lot of credit the past couple of episodes because they really hadn't been working together up to that point. This really felt like one of the first times we dedicated an episode to the two of them working together, even though they did go their separate ways in the beginning. I felt we got a lot of the two of them in the second half of the episode, and that was very welcome.
Yeah, me too.
All right, the work of the killer, be it Pete Pryor or not, you know, it's a little bit of, it depends, right? Because you could argue, okay, well, there wasn't a murder this episode, so is it disqualified? I mean, could we argue that the Lund possession, is that the work of the killer? Would we argue Reggie? I mean, I'm going to discount season one. There's no season one stuff happening with any killers this week. Even if you suspect Reggie Ledoux, he's not even in the episode. So I guess it comes down to, does season 4 win because of like the possibility of the killer having a presence in this episode, or are we just calling this a wash?
I mean, there is murder that happens in season 1. It's just not directly related in, you know, our
lowercase k killer.
Yeah. And I mean, for season 4, I just keep going back to the fact that we've got the corpsicle, you know, and maybe to your theory, the possession is the killer. So
yeah,
I have to give it to season 4.
I'll give it to season 4 as well, because you could also theorize that as much as I say, oh, there wasn't a murder this episode, technically there was, because remember, after Lund says his warning message to Navarro, he dies. So theoretically, if this killer is this spirit, it killed Lund. It killed once again.
Oh my gosh, he got gotched.
Yeah, the one sort of loose end was finally tied up, with the exception of Clark here. So season 4 is going to clean up on both the good and the bad side. Let's get to the ugly or not so ugly. Let's talk about the location. We go around a lot of Texas and Louisiana in season 1. Season 4, we do get some interesting landscapes. I loved the shipwrecked boat that Julia and Navarro talk in. I'm gonna go with season 1 just because of the setting of that final climactic point. You know, that feels like a true, tried and true location. And if we talk about it serving as a representation, unfortunately, of like what happens in those types of areas, I think it ended up being very authentic to that.
I'm gonna go with season 1 as well. Just like that shot of the boat go like meandering down the bayou.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't get any fan boat action besides that. I want more fan back sequences.
More fan boats.
I'm a fan of the fan boats. Red herrings. Now, we did see Kavik ice fishing this episode, but did we have any red herrings this episode?
I don't know that we did.
I don't really think so either. I mean, Reggie Ledoux, of course, like what we're pursuing, but it didn't necessarily feel like. I mean, maybe. Actually, I'm going to give it to season 1 because I feel like the stuff with like Charlie Lang, right? Of like, well, I showed pictures of Dora to him. Maybe this could be something. I think that is trying to lead us down a certain path of things.
It is, yeah. I don't think there's a red herring in this episode of season 4, so I'll give it to season 1 as well.
Music, season 4 wins this.
Season 4 wins. Although I do have to say, playing a song called "Are You All Right" over Marty and Rust clearly not being all right is hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, it really is so on the nose that like it's protruding into your face, but it's so funny because it's so on the nose.
Yeah, exactly.
Action sequence. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's got to be season 1.
Even though White Man can't jump, this is a slam dunk.
White Man can't drive.
He can. Certainly can. Copaganda. Now, this is interesting because, like, season 1 is sort of these cops will do whatever they want to get their perp, even if it means, evading their own force and going undercover under the guise of sick leave. Season 4 had, I think, Danvers and Navarro behaving better than they did the past 2 episodes. So does that move the needle more in their direction or in Hart and Cole's?
I think there was way more propaganda in season 4 because there were genuinely moments where I was like feeling for Evangeline and Danvers, and I did not have those moments for season 1. I was just like, what are you all doing? I mean, it's going to make the next category really hilarious.
Yeah, so let's move on to that. I'll give it to season 4 as well. The over the line moment for these 2 episodes. What have you got?
Where do we begin?
Where is the line? The line got sniffed.
Seriously, they did all the lines. That's the problem. I just telling someone that they probably got their wife killed because he asked whether or not he get a parole board nod. Testifying in court as a law enforcement officer while staring at the woman that you're having an affair with in the face. Stealing from the evidence locker so that you could do all the coke, so that you could be coked up enough to be believably coked up. Drinking while driving, while illegally following someone, and then beating someone with a gun to get someone else's location. I mean, like, it's a smorgasbord.
Oh, yeah. Quite literally, pick any sort of crime that they committed in this episode. They checked maybe every single box besides murder. That's the one thing that Cole decided not to do in this episode.
He was like, that's beneath me.
Yeah, that's where I draw the line.
Yeah, not this episode.
Yeah, season 1 gets it 100%. And I would not be surprised if, like, there's anything to beat that. This is the biggest over the line compilation of events we've experienced so far.
Yeah.
All right. Season 1 versus season 4. Insult, banter. It's very tough for me, LT, to not be overshadowed by, I think, what is my favorite line in True Detective season 1, which Matthew McConaughey sits with a straight face and asks, with all the dick swagger you roll, you can't spot crazy pussy.
The fact that is a line in a television show is one of the most ridiculous things to have happened in 2014. Like, what does that even mean? Like, what are you saying?
It's poetry. It truly
She
is.
looked crazy enough to have followed you there. You were so obvious that night. Like, he was on one, and it was hilarious. And then the Michael Jordan of being a son of a bitch is also a really good line.
It's a really good one too, I would say. It's
Yeah.
tough to follow that up, so I think I have to give it to them. I did like from Danvers at the beginning of episode 3 where Pete goes, "I thought you hated Navarro," and Danvers goes, "I do. I hate everyone. I hate you." But I it's just undeniable. I think it has to go to the Dick Swagger Crazy Pussy combo.
Oh my God. Not Dick Swagger and Crazy Pussy.
I know,
Okay.
the Wombo combo. All right, finally, the gore. And even though there was plenty of bodies to hit the floor in season 1, I would say it's relatively clean compared to just the garish effects on poor Lund's frostbitten body at the end of season 4's episode.
Yeah, him being hard to look at is an understatement. That nurse really undersold it. My God. Just like his eyes, like it's so difficult to look at, and he's got the one arm and he's pointing to behind Navarro.
Ugh.
It's just so gory. This is not fit at all in this category. I just have to give a shout out to Danvers because someone should always be pouring coffee in Hank's face.
Yes, I guess that's gore as well, considering that he may have suffered third-degree burns, and it's not just the thing that she's saying about the company he keeps.
Yeah, seriously. Did you hear the Dixieland?
Yeah, the freaking General Lee coming around the bend.
Wow. Yeah, I have to give it to season 4. I mean, like, there aren't nearly enough good nods to The Exorcist,
Yeah.
I mean, other than the Scary Movie, we're not looking at
which is like questionable at best,
Exactly. Yeah, we're not looking at very many good nods to The Exorcist. This legitimately was a great one.
Well, let's finish things off with the most important category of them all. Now, I just have a feeling, just a simple read, as to between these two episodes, LaTonya, I'm gonna think you prefer part 3 to Who Goes There.
I do. I mean, it's a tough call though.
Yeah.
Because there's something about this episode that like takes you back to where you were when you were first watching True Detective, if you've watched before, and to like what it felt like to see that oneer happen for the first time. And how much action is included in this episode, during that short period of time. And there is a lot of character development that happens for both of these men. I just prefer things to be horrific in a different way, I guess.
Mm-hmm. The horror was living there, just in a more systemic manner.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, it's like I don't want to keep being fancy fencered, but I think I might split it again. I think because I think season 1, I mean, it was a really, like, say what you want to about the writing. Yes, it might be cringe a decade later, but I thought it was such a well-structured episode. I really loved everything finally coming to a head for Hart, and for him to just like fully have his life combust in front of him, for him to finally get that karma coming back his way. And then I really love the deep dive into Cole and just the absolute depravity that this man has existed in and had to throw himself back into. It was the wildest episode that we've had of both of these shows yet, but I kind of want to give True Detective season 1 its flowers, partially because of that nostalgia bias and because like it was such a big episode of the show. I'll be intrigued to see, like, moving forward, if the show is able to hit that peak anymore. So I also kind of want to be like, let me put this flag in there temporarily so I can look back and say, all right, I gave some kudos to it where it needed to.
Yeah, no, I totally, like, I was on the fence, honestly, about which way to go. So I like that we split.
And we split the vote here again for the second week in a row. Both season 1 and season 4 split the categories here. Both had 5, and then both split our votes for the episode. So right now, True Detective season 4 is ahead. It won outright the first week and then tied the next 2 weeks. So True Detective season 1 is going to have to make up a little bit of ground. It might have the opportunity to do so next week. Just as a heads up, we're doubling up again for the second but last time. So next week, we're going to be covering episodes 5 and 6 of True Detective Season 1 and episode 4 of True Detective Night Country. Just a bit of a programming note there for you. But we still have business to take care of, LT. One final thing to do is give our MVPs and LVPs of these episodes. Where would you like to start?
Let's start with season 4.
All right. Season 4, I'm going to give this to Navarro. I think this is a very good Navarro episode. She finally gets to open up to Kavik. That dog is finally revealing the sweet soul inside of her. Not to mention, even from a practical perspective, like, she waltzes in from the Muckluck Telegraph, she says, with the information that they need. So I think it's that perfect balance of, like, really good character development while also simultaneously being a good cop in this episode.
Yeah, not everything can be found online, freshman. Her like ribbing Pete is also hilarious.
Yeah.
I think that I'm going to give it to Annie because this is the only time that we'll necessarily be able to do it. I think that her strength in like going from being like, yeah, no, I get that I'm going to be under arrest, but I'm not going anywhere until I deliver this child. And then literally getting the child to breathe its first breaths and then putting her wrists out and saying, okay, now you can take me. And then to the end, like just blood curdling screams. I stan a scream queen.
There we go. And I'm hoping that with the door opened on the idea of more substantial flashbacks, that we'll get more time to Annie, even if it's not through our POV characters, that we're not finding out so much about her relationship with Clark. It is interesting from a true crime perspective to get it through the evidence, but hopefully eventually we do get like a third person POV as to what happened in that cave.
Yeah.
All right. Who is your LVP for this episode?
Hank and his hillbillies.
Hank and the hillbillies. Yeah, you know what? Actually, if you want to give it to Hank, I will give it to the hunters.
Okay.
Because I think that like Hank isn't the one who gets in this stupid skirmish in the middle of a hospital, but he very much is the one to assemble the troops and do his best Tommy Lee Jones. We gotta search every hen house, whore house, etc., for Clark. So he is the spark, and they are very much the kindling. And yeah, what the hell are you doing, guys? Why are they even there in the first place? Did they get hurt on the manhunt? Why are they in the hospital?
I don't know why they're there at all. They shouldn't be on the scene. They should not be involved in this in any way, shape, or form. And I have no idea, other than it being like a warming center, why they would be at the hospital.
So right now, we've really been spreading the wealth when it comes to our MVPs, because all at one apiece is Navarro, newly on the board, Annie, Peter Pryor, Kavik, and the one-eyed polar bear. We have Danvers still nooching out, even though she did have a good episode. I think Navarro was better. And Hank really anchoring the LVPs right now, sitting at -3, and he will assumingly continue to sink down into the blackened depths. Let's move on to season 1. I'm going to give my MVP to Cole. Like,
nice.
Look what he was able to do.
Yeah.
Like, he was an absolute badass in the second half of the episode. He calmed Marty down, but he was able to like get what he wanted in getting Marty to go along with his cockamamie mission by being like, oh yeah, she'll definitely take you back. You're going to be forgetting about this like a lark. You'll be laughing over about it on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And then like when he actually did what he needed to do, again, it's the most impressive thing I've seen any of these cops do in both of these seasons so far. Him being able to like put out several fires at once almost superhumanly, I have to give a lot of commitment for.
No, I agree. Like mine definitely goes to Rust as well. Like I don't know how he was able to like duck so well behind those bushes, and how he managed to get like an injured man over a fence and like to a car. Honestly, everything is that he did in this episode is absolutely wild, and like Matthew McConaughey was LIVIN.
Absolutely. Tattooed on his ass and everything. Well, LVP, are we going with the man who was an ass in this episode, or are you giving it to Marty?
I think I have to.
Mm-hmm.
Just the scene in the courthouse alone.
I think that makes sense. I'm looking at Marty, and he's at -4, and Cole is at +4. And like, I need to be Thanos right now. I need to keep it balanced. So I will give an LVP point to Ginger,
Okay.
the ironically named biker gang person
Yeah.
that Cole joins up with, just because this dude is so incredibly inept. Not only does he have this grandiose plan to bust up this stash house that goes completely south because of the people he keeps, but also, to the point you made earlier, how is he not seeing a field of red flags in front of him this entire time about how Cole is not on the level?
I just don't understand. I mean, you like he, to be fair, is on a ton of drugs. You know?
Consistently on crank,
Like
24/7.
he is just a drug at this point. He's not even a man. He's like a drug-shaped man. So I'm sure that has a lot to do with it. I mean, like anyone who's going to choose that facial hair also, I've got a question for a lot of reasons. And then, just like generally keeping Black people hostage. I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So, as mentioned before, we have Cole and Hart as the opposite ends of our MVPs and LVPs when it comes to season 1. And we're only halfway through everything, LT. So, again, next week we are talking part 4 of True Detective Night Country, and we are talking The Secret Fate of All Life and Haunted Houses in season 1. Maybe we'll get some ghosts in season 1 as well, considering that title.
Yeah, I mean, I hope for ghosts in all things that I watch.
All right.
Reality TV, ghost.
Well, unlike the status of Ghost, you are keeping your activity very much alive out there on these internet streets, LT. What would you like to plug for everybody out there?
Yeah, so the Connect just covered Rustin, which is just a darling biopic about Bayard Rustin, the civil rights organizer who was openly gay and just trying to like make the March on Washington happen. It's produced by the Obamas, Academy Award nominated for Coleman Domingo, who we love. And me and Mari and Chappelle talked all about it in very spoilerific fashion. So that was very exciting. And then, I'm doing this. I also have entered a beauty pageant.
Yes!
It is a body positive beauty pageant on a dating app that I am using.
Amazing.
And
that's the most incredible sentence I've heard in quite some time.
And if you go to my Twitter at LK Starks, you can see how to vote for me because the polls are open and we're judging women again. So
finally, talk about a sign of the times for 2014.
I'm excited to be doing it. But yeah, follow me on Twitter at LK Starks or on Instagram at Stormborn1222 for all of the rest.
And you can, of course, follow me at a Mike Bloom type. And yeah, check out what LT's doing. She's doing some awesome stuff, both from a podcast perspective and I suppose a pageant perspective. Wishing you all the best of luck, LT. When do you find out the results? Is it ongoing?
It's ongoing until like February 9th or something like that. Okay. I think they're like, the goal is to ruin Valentine's Day for like several people.
Well, we'll get, a nice gift for you, hopefully, to pair with your win of the pageant. You and I will be back at that time next week as we delve into week 4 of this grand experiment that is Versus True Detective Edition. Of course, let us know your thoughts if you're a patron of post-show recaps. We have a channel not only dedicated to True Detective chatter there, but also to Versus chatter. Let your thoughts be known as we keep on comparing and contrasting into the back half of both of these seasons. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll be back next week, again, covering episode 4 of Night Country and episodes 5 and 6 of True Detective Season 1. Until then, everybody, take care